So they've already developed a behavior in the human to try to think that, hey, every time you do this, same thing with Febreze. You know, Febreze did the same thing. They couldn't sell Febreze. Their marketing guys. This was like the best thing that engineered, because it was a some type of a chemical that hid the scent, that broke down scents from animals and stuff. So mainly they try to market that to people with animals and cats, but it wasn't working. They came back, restructured it, and they said, look, after I come home, if I spray some Febreze, when I come home, I get a smell sensation. I get a smell sensation. So they started putting that into moms or people that clean homes, that after you clean, now you feel the reward was after you've cleaned it and you spray Febreze, now everything's clean. And that was the reward that they attached to everyone. And
All
boom.
right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the weekly jargon.
Yeah.
Jose Rodriguez was just calibrating himself there, telling us the power of marketing, right?
Marketing.
Yeah.
Well, that was that latest book that we were talking about, which is The Power of Habit, right?
Yeah, for sure. So talking about, we'll jump into a little bit more detail there, but just wanted to welcome everybody back. I know it's been a couple weeks. Life's kind of had us all against the ropes, right? We've all, our schedules have been pretty busy, but I'm glad to be back with you guys and back in the laboratory here. So a couple of good topics, right? So we got our book. Both Jose and I just happened to have read that, and we didn't really plan it, but The Power of Habit, and how you could either get rid of a bad habit or replace a bad habit with maybe a better one. A lot of science involved behind that. You got a little glimpse of that. And then, but you know what I'm really interested in, not that you're not interesting, but Rohi and I were talking about the new Apple goggles. And he told me, hey, it's not virtual reality. It's actually something else.
Augmented reality. Yeah.
Augmented reality?
Augmented.
Augmented reality. Okay, cool. So what does that mean, Rohi? Give us a breakdown.
I mean, so virtual reality, I mean, you got to understand is it's putting you into a false environment. The idea of virtual reality, I put it on, I'm in the Alps now. I'm experiencing that. Augmented reality is we're in this room still, but basically the device is interacting in such a way that, maybe there's something artificial to it that maybe I can look over to the side and see a little news article. Maybe I can actually see some kind of teleprompter.
Right.
That would be the idea of an augmented reality. So it's just enhancing the environment that's already around you in some way.
So could one say that it's kind of like what R2D2 would do in Star Wars, where it would bring this image, right, in some capacity?
That would be a good example of it. Yeah, I mean, so imagine being on a conference call of some kind, and instead of it just like you having to look at a physical screen and that's the only place for it, an augmented reality device, especially if it's on your head, you could be walking around the office and somehow that person would look like maybe they were there with you or walking along with you.
Wow.
So
I saw some concepts of like, mixers where, and I think with the virtual reality, there's like these little like mixer rooms where you can go into, but those are like avatars, right, of other people, Correct. But that's them, and so you kind of interact. But man, integrating the real world, real people. Now you're in this room. That's pretty neat, and not just any room, your own room. So, Apple rolled out or announced and leaked. This is coming, $3,500. Right? Everybody kind of said, "What the heck?"
Yeah.
But it does the benefit? I mean, does that make sense? Right?
Yeah.
What are your feelings towards that?
And always because we poke at it, I hate to say Google did it first, but is that I mean the idea of the augmented reality has been around for quite a while, and it's really going to come down to the partners that are behind it. I mean, because if I'm paying that much for a device, what is it enhancing in my life? What is it replacing in my life that makes me want to do this? Is it now I don't have to get my phone anymore? Can my phone stay in my pocket? Because I'm sure that's part of the experience to say, why keep picking up this screen and putting it in your face. It's in your face the whole time. And then obviously Google's big thing is they're an advertising giant. So their angle was the fact that you would have this, these glasses on, walk down the street and have this interaction to know like, oh, hey, Starbucks has a sale right now going on for coffee. Do you want an order? And, somehow being able to maybe order that straight through your little eyepiece there. So
Right. That's pretty interesting when you mentioned like replacing your cell phone. Because then it's like, well, do you need a TV at that point,
Correct.
right? Because it's all right there.
Yeah.
And what does that do to us? You know, if we're just all walking around with goggles at that point,
Yeah.
you know, does it ruin our eyes, or does it prolong them because we're not using them? There's not
so we've
less
had
exposure to light.
You know, we bought in probably about 5 years ago. We bought into the HTC Vive, which was at the time was kind of a little bit ahead of the Oculus at the time, and we had a lot of hours with it. And I can tell you that after you put in a certain amount of time, it messes with you. You know, and that was kind of one thing we always walked away with, is that, you know, things just felt different when you came out of it. You know, because it was a virtual reality, so it wasn't changing your environment around you, not so much the augmented part of it. So it can be very powerful.
So when your experiences when you say it messes with you, what was that?
So one of the things, so with Vive, you're attached by a cable. So one of the limitations to that is they have to put a security wall. So if you got to the edge, it would kind of bring up this like artificial jail.
Right.
Even when you took the headset off, you would sometimes still see that jail. You know, it was kind of weird, you know. And the other thing is that people don't realize how powerful the brain is to the eyes, to know that, like, it doesn't take very much to become actually sick from the device. I mean, like, if the device hangs up just a second, you'll throw up, basically. And people, that's kind of, again, the downside of it. They've actually made roller coaster games intended to make you throw up that just literally just jack with the vision just enough. Because, again, if your brain thinks you're moving and you're not moving, that's basically what causes you to become sick.
Wow.
That's very interesting.
It's
You
weird.
know, when I look at devices such as is that called the Oculus?
Oculus is the one Facebook bought out.
Facebook
so yes.
brought out. And that's the one that we're comparing it to. But this new device from Apple, I look at it as a $3,500, by the way. That's quite a bit of money. But I recall back when the Walkman was brought into and I don't know if you guys were around by that time, but this was probably, I don't know, maybe late 70s, early 80s. I remember these were very popular amongst the youth because this was a way to listen to your cassette players, put on some earphones, and then just, you know, and what that's evolved to, you know, these were distractions already for young youth. And I'm not saying distractions, technology, right? And then, you know, come to today, we have the iPhone, we have the Apple Watch, we have the earpods, is that what they call them?
Earpods.
And now you got this, but this whole thing's supposed to do it's supposed to integrate all these devices in one, right? Because I'm sure from here you can probably plug something to your ear. You got ways of maneuvering, I'm assuming with your hands. I don't know all the details, but from what I've seen, it seemed like you can do quite a bit of features in there that would replace typically you looking at monitors and maybe at the workplace. So maybe a new device for I'm not sure if it's for students, geared to students, or it's geared to corporate offices that are working from home. Now that the Zoom deal kind of took place, we are advancing in technology. I see this becoming something that's going to be integrated into some type of workspace and or students. But certainly $3,500 may be something that your child, my child, or even your child will want to say, Dad, can I get that for Christmas?
Well, and if Apple follows kind of the model they have in the past, the way to success here would be kind of what you said, which is to put it in the schools. Go to the schools and say, hey, look, we'll give it to you at some cheap, even almost free, right? Because if I can put it on every student and somehow have the teachers use it like for presentations or for whatever, now that power goes even more. Because that's what they did to computers. Apple gave these schools basically free computers. And what they did is they knew that the kids are going to be like typing on them. They're going to be doing all these things at school with it. And when the teacher says, hey, you got to go home and finish your report, they can't put it into a Windows PC. It has to be an Apple. So therefore, kid says, hey, Mom, Dad, we have to buy an Apple because that's what I use at school.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where Apple took off, is just because they put it in the schools. So that's kind of where I would say we're, getting past like kids thinking it's cool.
Yeah, that's what I forgot about that. And when they put it in schools, they looked really cool.
Yeah.
They were different colors, green and orange,
Yeah.
and so I remember those in elementary school.
Your era was probably the old, well, not the old, but the MacBook where it was colored. the plastic blue, pink,
Yeah,
blue, right?
Yeah.
In my era, I remember you had the floppy disks, and you had to insert those,
Yeah.
and it would still make a funny noise when it want to run the
Yeah.
disc. And back then was the Oregon Trail. I'm
Yeah.
talking
Oh, yeah.
maybe mid '80s, late '80s, but
Yeah.
that was very impressive of how. Or this jungle game that we had there, and it was mainly small commands, but it allowed you to get through certain features of the gaming at that time.
Yeah.
But I know it's evolved, and now look where we're at. We're now using everything with these goggles that bring everything to life, or bring everything to your, like you said. I mean, does that mess with you? I mean, what kind of, if any, mental health issues that you may evolve because of these particular gadgets?
I mean, like anything, the technology, there's probably a very good thing to say, like productivity, the ability to make a better environment for that engagement, but then the ability to abuse the technology, I think, is where a lot of it has its downfall. Are you going to have a chance to relax, or are you just going to get so used to, like, I don't take this thing off now, it just is a part of me, and
Does it isolate that individual? Again, physical health being one of them. We don't get enough exercise today because a lot of kids, and this is again studies that are formulated. But again, I don't know in what areas. I'm not sure if you start seeing this more in certain generations. Obviously, in our generation, phones were in a big part of our lives. So up until I was probably 20, did I get a cell phone? But look, 20 years before that, there wasn't anything like that other than the Nintendo, Super Nintendo,
Right.
but only that had its limits. You couldn't really get out there and interact like you do with the PS5 now, where now you have communities, Fortnite, all these other things that you can do, and it's very interactive. I mean, I like the social aspect of it in the setting, like these gaming worlds, but when it comes to something that's so close to you, like you said, you may not want to take this off. Now you got earphones that are plugged to you constantly, 24/7, not knowing what effects it may have on your physical and or mental health in the future.
Well,
And
you get
that's
the
one thing
dependency. I think as you develop, is you're going to develop that dependency that says, like, if I want to, have anything at my fingertips, I can. But if I take it off, I'm helpless. Like I can't do anything by myself.
This world's so boring.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you making a reference to my hair? Without, like,
Yeah, you're like.
so the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah. How's it going there?
Are we going there?
Are we going there? Is that what you're saying?
So Jose, you shaved your head, buzzed your head. There's a red Corvette outside.
Yeah. It's just one of those.
Is it midlife or
Midlife crisis hitting me and saying, Jose, if you want to grow your hair, do it now. And if you want to know what your hair looks like, what it looks like without hair, do it now. And truth be told, look, as I get older, obviously we start developing certain thinning of hair, and I wanted to see what my hair looks like to see if I needed to restore it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm starting at what do you call it, ground zero, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So in a couple of months, then I'll come back and let you know what the progress is.
Yeah. It looks good. It looks good right there. The problem is, like, if you're trying to get it back to where it was, there's that awkward transition phase where it's like, how do I comb it? Because it doesn't really comb down. And so,
Well, I've
good
noticed
luck.
that certain sections of my head obviously have different features of my hairline, and a receding line and then thinner line. But, if I can joke about it, then I can live with it. And I think it's important that people know that, hey, it's not just me. The 50% of men, they thinning hair, and sometimes it's a reality, but you have to face it. And with me, if I can just crack a smile and go with it, and hopefully within a couple of months I'll restore it. That's one thing about hair that always grows back.
Yeah.
For some people, it doesn't grow back in certain areas, but we'll know where we're at.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, and when we go back to the augmented reality, right? I can't, I think in the last 70 years we've had such a technology has just boomed. Like every 10 years looks different, right? So almost literally every generation has been able to say, that's going to be bad. That's going to be a distraction, And you talk about the Walkman. Oh, they're not even talking to anybody. They're just going to be listening to music the whole time, right? Well, that actually helped propel music, and now everybody has something to talk about, in relation to music. And so I'm not as I'm a little bit more optimistic that this is actually going to bring some pretty neat features. that price point right there is going to make it to where not every kid's just going to be walking around with that, at least not for the next probably 3 or 4 years, because that's just too expensive. My kid wants it, but you could use mine.
Yeah.
You know, while you're at the house, but you're certainly not going to be walking or going to the golf course with it and leaving it in your car and, you know, risking somebody breaking into your car and, you know, stuff like that. Right?
And that was Google.
No, exactly. So that's another incident that we can talk about.
But see, I mean, you talk about like, you know, Jose wouldn't leave in his car because Jose would be wearing it and using an app when he's golfing to tell him distance to the hole, club he should choose, probably give him a flight path. Maybe it tracks his ball as he hits it.
Wow,
Yeah, that
play
sounds
golf?
pretty
It seems
good.
like you've been out at the course a couple times.
Is he a stakeholder? In
I'm
Apple,
just
or?
saying that's where it should go.
Yeah.
Whether it gets there or not is totally different. But
I
that's
think
where
it will,
when you say like, why would Jose ever take it off? Well, he'd take it off maybe to sleep and maybe to go take a shower. The rest of it, there's a benefit in every part of his life. Like he said, his coffee machine, he wants to set it. Well, he can just through his little device. Maybe it's already a smart one. He can set it through his little headset.
So and to your point, I started noticing that and I'm gonna go back to history a bit more, but even early 1900s, you started seeing the urbanization of certain cities, right? A lot of population, but the communication piece and during those times was either a very primitive use of a telephone, maybe telegraphing, or what was the communication when they were doing the
Morse code and stuff.
They were using the I can't.
It's
a telegraph.
Yeah.
A telegraph, right? And but nevertheless, that was the way people communicated.
Mm-hmm.
Bring it to today, and now you have a global community that you can see through forms of platforms like TikTok, Facebook, what other people in other countries are doing via this platform, and you can somehow socialize or have a sense of community or socialization, so to speak, with all the other countries in the world. Whereas before that wasn't the case. But what we grew up on is that, hey, you go to school, you have friends, you play either dodgeball, you play this, you play that, you're out in the streets riding bikes. That was an era that I felt, at least in my generation, was golden because it gave us an opportunity to be physical, get out there, run, experiment with certain things, not having a phone. When somebody called your home, it was through the home phone number. Nobody had to worry. What happened in emergencies back then? Well, what did happen? How did you deal with them back then? You always dealt with it in a certain way. But because of the technology, and I'm talking these processors that we've had exponentially, they've grown like every 10 years. They grow so fast, so much, to the point where we have this type of augmented reality is what you call it. Virtual reality, so to speak, in a way also. But, that's amazing how that's... And my concern is how is that going to affect that social aspect with people? And I've asked this before, but, does it bring another community, another sense of social communities together when you're connected by this device?
So that's what IBM they started doing with the tennis matches. So and even baseball games, you can actually with the VR with Vive and stuff, you can put it on, and they have a 360 camera basically in the stands. And when you put it on, it feels like you're there. So you can look around, you can see the real people around you. Obviously can't interact with them.
Like what's happening in that exact moment.
But you feel like you're right there in that spot that they have the camera. So and there's a desire for that. Obviously there's that gap of accessibility, because in the beginning, obviously, I don't know, there's not going to be every person on the block getting these devices. It's going to be more of a slow rollout. And as they kind of figure out where people want things, that's where the technology goes. But they have that. They've been playing with that for years, especially during COVID when you couldn't go to these games. You weren't allowed in those places. It was a way to kind of put it on, experience it, and be there.
Now, you brought up a really good point there, and I'm not sure if this is something that's already allowed. Maybe the technology is already there. So one, in a sense, can say, it's Super Bowl day. I got my goggles. I set up my whole thing, but once I put this on, I'm actually at the Super Bowl.
You feel like you're there.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
The NBA is has done that.
Yeah.
The NBA is doing that right now.
So where you could be courtside, listen
Courtside.
to the audio that's in there, right? All integrated into that system that you put on. Once you put on this augmented reality device, then you're pretty much at the courtside.
Yeah.
Talking to LeBron.
And I think anything in excess is always a danger, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could agree on that. And so there is going to be the situation where the person doesn't want to leave their room and they're locked in a closet and they're just hopping into all these like worlds, remotely. And we're gonna say, oh my gosh, look at what it's doing to people, right? But to your point, I don't think it's especially feasible up front. But I mean, look in the future, maybe 15, 20 years out, and Elon Musk talking about putting the chips in your heads, and so at that point, there is no goggles anymore, right? It just taps right in. And you can just see it, right? That's
It's too much, right?
that sounds crazy today, but you take this iPhone or any cellular device and you roll it out to somebody in the 50s and you show them everything it could do, they're gonna say, yeah, right. That's witchcraft.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's like what I was saying with there's like Google Lens is kind of that. It's still obviously part of your phone, but that's part of that idea of bridging that technology of, like I can put up my phone and, if I wanted to translate this text because I'm in a foreign country, it automatically does it. If I wanted to know what kind of plant is this right now, I could use the Google Lens or that. So it's the
I do see that. Like
it's just the convenience of it just kind of being there is where Apple's bridging that gap.
Yeah.
So it's now we talk about Google. And then we talk about Apple. Would you say that these are the two competitors that dominate the market in this type of these types of devices and
yes
technology?
and no. Again, Google has a handle on the data. Like that's where they're going to always beat out Apple. They have the information, they have the partnerships, they have the infrastructure there that says they already know who he is, what he likes, what he's going to buy. His interests.
They're already starting to solicit me for products because
but Google knows. Google knows you. Apple does not.
Yeah.
Apple doesn't have that. They'd have to partner with somebody else to figure that out and buy the data from somewhere else. But Apple has the hardware. They have that structure that says we're only going to let the best in and try to keep out the riffraff. That's where Apple's going to benefit. Google is still more of like, we're just testing things out. We're playing around with ideas. We don't know where we're going with it.
And that's kind of where how we started the conversation. Google has been doing this or has been flirting with this whole concept. But now Apple sits back, watches, tests, and now it's like, okay, we're ready. We're ready. Here's the hardware. Here's what it looks like. Here's what it does. But they're still going to be reliant on Google's services in order to,
for a lot of them,
in order to make it successful.
Well, and their success is going to be in augmented reality, not virtual reality. Because that's where Facebook's downfall is. This metaverse and this whole idea that kids are going to want, or anybody's going to want to put this thing on and be in these little virtual hangouts with avatars. Nobody wants to do that. That's not what they want. But augmented reality means I can have it. I'm walking around. I'm doing my day to day. It's helping me with every aspect of my life, not just hanging out somewhere that I want to hang out.
Now going back to that metaverse about the avatars, I think that gives not only conceals but it actually protects those that have insecurities about being out in this metaverse, so to speak, right? So now that you're an avatar. And the person across the street looks like an avatar, or an avatar that just defines who you are. Because obviously you're creating these avatars,
correct?
Right? And essentially, I say that because in society today we do have I'm not saying a high rate, but we do have individuals, maybe students, that feel like they don't fit in, but yet in these particular universes, it seems like they become very comfortable.
They can recreate themselves.
Yes, and feel the confidence of saying, you know what, I am very successful. I am very creative, innovative, and value. I have value because I think that's the one thing that I see and I hear over and over and over is that kids somehow feel disenfranchised or undervalued when they're either at school or what have you, and or maybe the word undervalued, disenfranchised may not be the one that's identifying the issues. Maybe just insecurities or something, some vulnerabilities that they have as they're developing as young adolescents, and these platforms probably give them that sense of value that they seek, right?
Yeah, but again, the thing Facebook ran into right away is they started seeing, because it's kind of fake, people's overreaching abilities to start abusing people, even physically, because I mean, those avatars, they were basically assaulting sexually, people, and they had to actually make like fake buffers so that I couldn't come. You know what I mean? So it's like it's a whole different thing in this.
There's
this
always going to be
metaverse.
crime, and there's always going to be ways to be exploited in these, even in these metaverses. Yeah.
Well, we are creatures of habit, right? And not only that, what I mean by that is biologically, we have these traits, and with that, I mean, our DNA is structured so that we either, some of us procreate, whatever the case may be, but that's just a tendency that we have already built in our DNA. So, I mean, I'm thinking that when you create these buffers, you're really starting to say, no, I'm going to discipline you, and I'm going to divide who you truly are biologically, and I'm going to tell you where you can and can't be, right? And what I mean by that is, typically human beings, like many primitive animals or even primates, for example, we have certain tendencies, they have certain traits, and some of those are to be, if you look at the chimps or you look at any other, then you start seeing like their behaviors.
Well, it's
and a lot
territorial.
of them, possessive. Yeah. Obviously, there's hierarchy. There's societies within them, but their behaviors. At times, I look at them and go, they're not that much different from humans.
No, but the virtual reality, it's you build in a sense of it's not real, so therefore it's not happening. But augmented reality is, if I punch you, it still happened right here. There's still going to be some recourse to that. Versus if in virtual reality, if we're having a boxing match, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, I think a good difference in Grand Theft Auto, the game Grand Theft Auto, is it's not virtual reality, but it essentially is. It's just not, you're just not looking at it in that with the VR headset. But I have friends that I've gamed with for a long time, ever since we were kids essentially, and they still game, and I'll follow them on Twitch and watch their feeds, and they got really into Grand Theft Auto over the last year. And every once I go in there just to be mess with them in the comments and whatever, but they are literally living in this world. And it's their structure, massive structure in that Grand Theft Auto. My two friends, they're cops in the game. And there's hierarchy. Yes, boss. Hey, lieutenant. And they have team meetings. They meet in the jail, and he debriefs them, and he says, all right, we're going out. And there's real criminals in the world. Other people like us three, we could start a gang, and we can say we want to rob, banks and stuff. And if you go and try to rob a bank, they're alerted. They have all this special equipment because they're privy to it. But it only works if everybody, follows suit and agrees that, like, okay, yeah, you're the lieutenant or you're the chief, the police chief, and we have to listen to you, right? And so I'm asking, like, well, what if I just started a gang and came in with like 10 dudes and like just started trying to wipe out the police, And he says, well, you can try, but like that's, people try, but we're pretty deep, like, we're pretty good at this, and they are. Yeah. To the point where these guys are like, and mind you, sometimes these streams are like 5 or 6 hours. I'm like, dude, you've been on here for a long time. And it's always, yeah, bro, I'm off today, and they all have full-time jobs and everything, but they're sitting at a intersection and clocking people's speed. And they'll, somebody's going 100 miles per hour because that's what you do in video games, right? They'll pull their asses over. Yeah. And if they don't obey, then they could, in their little like world that they're in, because there's different like servers you could be part of, they can enforce time where you're like stuck, like in jail, right? So it's, or they could fine you money, so you lose money, or you have 30 minutes of time where you can't play. So there's consequences to the actions. And so, like, even I was getting, like, kind of interested. I'm like, oh, my God, I do not want to get addicted to something like that because that's pretty crazy, you know. But at the same, so, you know, there's those rules. But I think at the end of the day, like you're saying, they know it's not real.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you kind of, it's like, it's something I'll do on a Saturday on my day off. And, you know, every morning I'll do that, you know, or every Saturday morning I'll do it for like 5 hours and then, you know, then get back to real world. But now if you take that concept and now if you're walking around and you have different games or different things that you can do, even with a stranger, right? Mm-hmm. You're at Starbucks and they have theirs and you have to, hey, do you want to play some like ping pong or something, mm-hmm. right? And you're playing ping pong in Starbucks and the ball's bouncing around everywhere, right? And you have probably have your little cage where you're protected.
This is what, again, Google did.
Yeah.
Is what Pokemon Go.
Yeah, Pokemon Go.
Which actually started as an original game called Ingress, but that Pokemon Go was, again, and it's, you don't see it as that way, but it's an augmented reality. You had a map.
You're right.
That was augmented on top of an existing map that made you think there's a gym or there's a Pokemon right here. That's augmented reality.
But that required a certain device, right?
That your smartphone.
No, just any cell phone. Yeah.
But the augmented part is, again, it took a real world map, streets and corners, and it built off another game that actually provided the data. But you know, it would basically you would have to physically go to this park because there was a Pokemon that you wanted to capture.
So kind of like Zelda, where you would go, I mean, if you remember Zelda, right? I mean, I'm going back to old school because this is the stuff that I played. You would visit these particular corners or stops, and in order to get whatever reward
but this requires you to physically go there.
Physically,
that's the augmented.
Physically.
Yeah, like I could say, hey guys, Jose, there's a Charizard that's over here at the courthouse, right? Or outside of the courthouse, and literally 20, 30 people would be outside trying to find the Charizard and trying to catch it.
Yeah.
And so there was a little game, part of it. And so you saw these people, and I think there was was it like Mewtwo or something? There was like one that was super rare, and everybody was like migrating to this specific like state, like it was somewhere else, and they were trying to catch this really rare, Pokemon. It became a game.
So I need to ask. Hold on.
Got to wrap your brain around.
How do you? Is it controlled by GPS and it says it's at this specific location?
Yes.
So if you drive yourself there and you're standing at the spot, X marks the spot.
You open your app and then you have your camera open and you're scanning and you could catch it. Like
how? Like what? There's a device that somebody put there?
No. So it's all.
Yeah. So the game, and this because I was part of this before. It was Pokemon. There was another game called Ingress, and Ingress was Google needed people like us to go and find what they call places of interest. So statues like Town and Country, like the little lions in front. That's a place of interest. Somebody would go there. The first person would take a picture of it. Say, whatever, Lions Park Lions or something. Google will look at it and go like, yeah, that's kind of a place of interest where people would migrate to. And now that became like, at this point, we were defending territory. So it was, you'd have to go there and be within a certain area, and you would have to like maintain like gangs. There were 2 gangs, and you had to maintain your territory.
Capture the flag.
Yeah, it's kind of capture the flag. But so Google was using people like me to go around and physically take pictures of things that seemed interesting to make places of interest. They sold that technology to the Nintendo basically in Pokemon, right? I mean, and basically it's the same game, same points, except they just on top of it, they just made it a kids-friendly game that everyone watched with Pokemon.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then, as you were catching Pokemon, then there's these gyms, like you said, and that gym could be like Starbucks or whatever, right? And you can, if you're near a gym, we can battle now. Mm-hmm. So
So if I'm that developer, then it would be convenient for me to make sure that you're always at places where you can consume, and I can get that store to pay me a dividend.
Yes, you gotta remember
because
it's Google.
I'm driving.
It's Google.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Google's marketing.
I'm in the wrong business.
Google's marketing, exactly. Their idea was that, before they sold it to Pokemon, their idea with Ingress was that like my business could pay to be a position of interest, because they knew that that position would drive people to want to hang out. I mean, like you're saying with Pokemon, people will if Starbucks was a point of interest, they'll hang out there for maybe hours, just if
And
they're
consume
looking
drinks.
and consume, because it's
Yeah.
you got to hang out, you know. So that's kind of where
Because your body still needs to.
yes, you still have to physically be there.
So where are we with all this? I mean, why are we not creating some type of
It's the data. I mean, that's the expensive part, and that's where again, the success to Apple is going to be either they're going to hit the classrooms and get the schools involved to make it a necessity at home.
Create a habit.
You know, yeah, create the habit. You know, create that learning experience that parents say like, oh, well, it's working in school. I want my kids to learn like that out of school, or they have to make the environment and the content so rich that like it just works with your everyday life.
Yeah.
You know, what I mean, like I said, with your golf. I mean, like, imagine if this thing had a golf app that you could wear and it just improved your game because it's able to tell you, okay, you're this far from the hole. Maybe you can like again augmented. You could actually see where the flag is even through the trees. You could see the course overlay. I mean, like that would be something that you would because it's something you do.
well,
it would be
again,
worth it.
you said augmented, whereas right now there is simulators that's more like a virtual.
Correct.
Right. So
Yeah.
you can get up there and they have these Doppler radars or radars that pick up really good information from your hit. You hit the ball and it picks up the spin rate, the speed of the club, the angle that you attacked it, and therefore it can simulate how the ball is going, the flight pattern, and where it'll land. So now they've created games, kind of to your point, but these are still in the virtual platforms. But the augmented one, now that certainly would be a game changer because, like you said, they do make devices that'll give you slope rating, that'll give you all these particular distance yards, but I think there's more data that you can extrapolate and add to these particular.
And I'm just using golf because golf is a very data-rich game.
Very,
so like
very
if you
much,
could,
very
like I
much
said, if you can look at even like if you're putting and you can look at the hole and you can see the slope
you
patterns.
can see all the undulations and
but not just some like fake, but like as you stand. And maybe you can even track like your putter position to know like, okay, Jose, you're not even putting straight. Like there's all kinds
it
of.
seems like you play quite a bit there to know all that.
Once a year I play.
Well, I mean, in golf they already integrated the rangefinder, right?
Correct.
So you can scan and see distances and
So there's virtual. What I was telling Bro is there's virtual simulators now that'll tell you and give you all the information with striking that ball. It gives you all these data points. But to your point, flight rangefinders will give you slope rating, give you distances in yards, meters, whatever you want to see. But what you said is pretty important because when you play these virtual games like the Tiger Woods, it would kind of show you how the slope and how the right. So then you would putt according to that information.
Correct.
So interesting how all that. Wow.
And if you're a kid watching this, all this means is that it's going to be more and more difficult to be a professional at in any sport because with all this data and science and information being infused, I mean, you're getting it's milliseconds of time that matters now, right? And it's all this stuff that's being integrated just dials us in even more.
I didn't know that gaming was a sport.
Esports.
ES sport, right?
Esports.
Esports. Okay, so I didn't know that. So I attended my son's. They had an award ceremony for the athletes, and sure enough, gaming.
You can letter in it.
You can letter in it. Yeah. So that is now. I didn't know that. So again, gaming could be the next thing where there's I'm sure there's a lot of money in it, but it can certainly gain a lot of traction where. Maybe the next big thing.
And I mentioned I have a group of friends at games and stuff. And so I do have a respect for gamers because gaming is actually a lot like a sport where you see it on TV and you say, oh, I could do that. Mm-hmm. And then you go up against somebody who actually trains, who's actually good, who actually, and you're like, wow. You're playing with me like I'm silly putty, right? And the same thing with in gaming, right? You see these streamers, YouTubers, and we like to kind of, I think our generation kind of discredits them a little bit as far as, they're just on YouTube making this money and, they don't really have to work. But the skill that they're bringing to do what they're actually doing on that screen, really difficult.
A lot of hours.
Really difficult.
Just like any professional, I think you have to spend a lot of time to maneuver or master whatever moves that you're doing in that gaming world. But
Yeah.
I can tell you firsthand that when I play the PS4, I don't have the PS5,
Yeah.
and I'm playing some type of Modern Warfare. When I first started, remember my brother-in-law would just see me and just play with me and say, "Hey, come behind me." But now, I've learned some of those moves where I too can become a pretty danger for some people. But I enjoy playing with my son, and it's back and forth, a lot of rivalry there. But it's good to play, and I won't do it unless it's interactive with other folks because I feel like a computer, it's just not. I know what computers are generating and crunching numbers, but I want to play against someone that has a human effect of you make mistakes just like I
Correct,
do. It's the
correct.
person that makes the least amount of mistakes that becomes a better player because you learn how to maneuver that, and that's something that you're taught just
Absolutely.
playing time and time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of getting into, video games and, how we kind of interact with technology and utilize it. And, we talk about habits, both good and bad. And, those habits, gaming could potentially be bad if you're spending too much time taking away from your job, your family, whatever it might be. And so, Jose, we started off this segment or this episode with you kind of going in on all of your footnotes from the book, the Power of Habits, right?
Power of habits, and that's,
And-
I think you brought up a good point that you actually have to formulate something in order to create a habit. Why don't you talk about that? Because I heard that you recently read that book as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the process of reading it, so I can't give you all the good stuff. I'm only about halfway through. No, but I thought it was interesting how they break down, and we talked a couple of episodes ago about audiobooks, right? And that's kind of how this came about. And I'm on the road probably close to 2 hours, three or four times out of the week, and so it gives me a lot of opportunity to get some of this reading in. But in the way this structured or the book's structured is it gives you all of the science, all of the understanding of like habits, what they are, how they come about, and plenty of examples, real life examples, corporate retail, marketing strategies, all of this on how we're actually victims of our own habits, and they're leveraged by these marketing firms. They know what our habits are, and so they leverage them and they steer us into the direction of their products, right? So I actually feel it very cool. And you were touching on some of the examples, the brushing your teeth, Febreze, all of that stuff.
All
And
of it, yeah.
it's AA, right? The Alcoholic Anonymous, right? And is that what it stands for?
Yep, that's what it was.
Anonymous.
Yeah.
And so their 12-step program and how that has it almost seems like it just stumbled upon being like working, right? There wasn't huge science that was brought in prior to that being created. It was just something that just seemed to work, and over years they've kind of fine-tuned it, and as scientists look at it now, they say, wow, you guys are spot on, right? Because that ties right into what we believe, right? So anyway,
No, I mean, you said it. I mean, it's just developing these habits, and not necessarily sometimes personal individual, but how you can integrate them in companies, corporations. If you want to create a certain behavior from, like, let's say, for example, employees or some mass group of people, then you have to integrate a certain type of a cue, then a routine, and then it goes into a reward. And that's what the book is saying, is that this is how behaviors or habits are formed, is by these particular elements that construct the habit. But it's pretty interesting. I think I'm reading it for a second time. I like to read the book. I skimmed through it as I went through it, but I found a lot of good, interesting information. But again, when you read something, you only retain certain portions of it. I wanted to read it a second time so that I can really understand how to develop my own habits. And one of them that I did was just trying to get up early. How do I get up early? How do I try to get myself so that I can start the day and start generating new ideas again? And I had to reward myself with something, right? And this is, again, you have a cue, you have a routine, and at the end you have a reward. What motivates me? And that's going to be that reward at the end of the day. So I figured, I like coffee. I like coffee early in the morning. Mm-hmm. So what can you do different to try to get your coffee early in the morning? Well, it's create a behavior. And my routine was to develop, or at least time my coffee maker to get the coffee dripping at as early as 6 o'clock in the morning. And once that smell was circulating around the room, that gave me a cue that I had to get up and create that routine to develop that habit. And that something that it's autopilot for me. So now my clock, my internal clock gets me up at that time no matter what, because I've already developed that habit. And that's the power of it. And you can do that in many different forms. For me, it was just trying to get up early so that I can start processing the things that I need to do for my work early on so that I can try to finish off early. That was my biggest thing and challenges that I had growing up, right? So
yeah. No, it's good stuff. And I think when you dissect it that way, it's always about identifying the cue, right? What triggers me to want to do this? And it's the routine that makes that behavior good or bad, right? The reward, the end game is like, well, what are you trying to get out of it right now? With the alcoholics, some people just said, well, when I get bored or when I get frustrated, I want to drink because it makes me forget about what I was frustrated about. It makes me, it entertains me. It, does all these things. And so that's my reward, right? And so that's why they came up with the sponsor or the buddy program, where if you feel like, when you get your cues where that go off that say, man, I'm bored, man, I'm frustrated, man, I'm mad at the world, you call your sponsor and that person just talks to you. And they're not sitting there, from my understanding, I've never been, but this is the book's talking you about it, but or telling you about it. But they're not talking about, hey, man, don't drink and, this and that. They're not like burdening you with that. It's just, hey, how you doing? How the kids doing? And so many people, not all of them, but many people, that conversation, that escape during that conversation supplements going to the bar and escaping at the bar, or going to the cabinet and escaping through alcohol. And so your reward is, well, I'm no longer bored. My mind's occupied. And so that's why that has been so successful.
And that, to your point, that's the routine. You're modifying. The cue and the reward stay the same because you're going to get that sense of endorphins that comes in at the end. But it's the routine that you can modify, and anyone can do it. It's just not knowing how to do it. Sometimes you find yourself hitting the wall every single time. And again, habits can be good and habits can be bad. And in cases like where the AA comes in, it just so happened that their steps happens to identify the routine. You can modify that routine by calling a sponsor and therefore not having to fall victim again of the addiction that you have. The reward at the end is you feel that refreshness that, hey, I didn't have to do that. Yeah. And essentially it catches on to where you hope that after you do it so long, it becomes an autopilot. Yeah. And that's the same thing that I was saying about brushing your teeth. We know we have to brush our teeth. Yeah. We know that it has to, but we don't think about it. We just go in there. We know we get and it's already something that we do. Even with the shower, we go in there. We know where to scrub everything. We're not thinking about, hey, I got to get back here. Yeah. We already know it's part of your routine. You've already ingrained that routine. The reward is that you're going to feel clean. You're going to feel good going into bed, and that's the power of the habit.
And and that book, it's just talking about what's the company?
Pepsodent.
Pepsodent.
Yeah,
Pepsodent. So Pepsodent, they added the mint flavor, right? Because we need something tangible. We need a fast reward, right? We don't want to wait until we're old to know, oh yeah, I've been taking care of my teeth, right? That's too long. You want to know instantly that, oh, this is fresh, right? And then something even more tangible is while you're brushing, they made it to where it foams dramatically, right? Because that sense of foaming while you're brushing, the more foam that comes up and my mouth's full of foam, there's no benefit to the foam. There's no benefit to the mint in relation to the health of your teeth, but it triggers in your mind, look at my teeth are being cleaned. My teeth taste clean now, and so that they leverage that behavior, or they leveraged your the result of that in order for your new habit to want to brush your teeth and now buy their product because it tastes good, right? And then Febreze did the same thing. So pretty interesting to see how I don't know if you guys ever watched Mad Men, the series about the Donald Draper, this guy who's just a genius when it comes to marketing, and it's all this drama in between. But it makes you say, man, I want to go work for an advertising firm, right? But again, every professional, when you're an amateur, they make you realize you're an amateur, right? And so this book made me realize, like, man, these guys, there's a lot of science behind it. There's actual research and years of research. Like for Breeze, for instance, they went a whole year, spent millions of dollars on basically a whole campaign that was incorrect. And when they finally realized why it was incorrect, rolled out another $1 million. And so there's a lot of time, effort, and money involved in those things. But nonetheless, once they got it right, it became a $1 billion industry.
So before we end, I will ask my colleague here, Rohi, any habits that you're working on, or any habits that you like to improve?
Actually, because I get more in the reading, but I'm doing the ebooks. That is my habit. I have a habit. Every time I get in the car, I plug it in.
I'm believe it or not, I took his advice, and I do a lot, like I said, YouTube, but I want us to start coming back and maybe talking about one specifically, and then like this Power Up habit. It just so happened coincidentally that you've on it. I've read it. And Rohi, you're always the oddball. I don't know why. You have the Android. You don't want to get into the iPad, the iPhone. What's going on? Anyhow, looks like we came to
and if you guys want to catch up with us, or next week, I'll talk about a book that I actually finished and maybe encourage my fellow jargoners to read. It's called He's Not Lazy, and it's actually a very powerful book for parents. With teenagers or kids that are about to be approaching that teenager age. And, it very structured to the same way of the Power of Habit, where the first half is all about the science behind it. And they're giving you facts on like how the brain works, what these guys are going through, how to understand it. And then the second half is more of like, here's how to coach or mentor or father or parent that in give different types of suggestions. And now everyone's situation is different, but super powerful book, and really opened my eyes. So can't wait to share that with you. If you have any comments or would like to add any input, please leave them in the comments regarding the Apple's new goggles.
augmented reality.
Augmented reality, right? What else did we talk about? If you've read The Power of Habit, or if you're interested in that information, we'll leave a link below so you can go check out that book. And if you want to jump ahead, the book I just suggested, He's Not Lazy.
There you go. Subscribe. Leave your comments. Thank you again.
All right. Take care.